In this video, Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But what if being too available is exactly what's keeping you from that? What if constantly showing up for others is making you disappear to yourself? This isn't just about relationships, it's about reclaiming your power, your mystery, your worth. Today we'll uncover why stepping back isn't rejection, it's self-respect, and that's when everything begins to change. The psychological symbolism behind being too available is far more profound than we tend to realize. On the surface, it appears to be a matter of boundaries, of time management, or even of emotional intelligence. But when we explore it through the lens of Carl Jung, we uncover something much deeper, something archetypal and unconscious, rooted in the very fabric of the human soul. Carl Jung taught that every human being lives in two worlds simultaneously, the outer world of appearances and the inner world of symbols, instincts, and unconscious drives. When a person becomes constantly available, emotionally, mentally, or physically, they risk collapsing the delicate boundary between these two worlds. The outer persona begins to dominate, and the inner self fades. They become a performer in someone else's play, always present, always ready, always giving, until nothing sacred remains within them to protect. To be too available is not merely a behavioral issue, it's a symbolic one. It represents the loss of the sacred self. Jung spoke often about the value of withdrawal, of descent into the unconscious, of pulling back from the world in order to listen to the voice within. When we are always available to others, we silence that voice. We become, in Jungian terms, a one-dimensional figure, a persona, rather than a whole being. This availability may be praised in society. We are told that to love means to be there, that to support others means to be reachable. But Jung would argue that love without individuation is not truly love. When you are endlessly present for others, they begin to relate not to your soul, but to your function. You become the caretaker, the listener, the helper, but not the self. And slowly this pattern destroys not only your own psychic center, but also the symbolic value you hold in the eyes of others. Availability, in excess, erodes mystery, and mystery is vital to the psyche. Jung understood that the unconscious thrives on symbols, on what is hidden, subtle, and beyond rational grasp. When you are always available, you remove the symbolic veil. You become an object of convenience, not a subject of desire or reverence. The other person no longer has to wonder, to seek, to imagine. They no longer project depth upon you. Your soul becomes flat, uninteresting, unchallenging. This is why, paradoxically, when you withdraw, others often begin to pursue. They feel the absence not only emotionally, but symbolically. The psyche experiences this withdrawal as a loss of a sacred object, and it begins the search to reclaim it. But this search is not about you alone. It is about what you represent. In Jungian terms, you become a container for the projection of the anima or animus, the inner ideal, the mysterious other. Only in your absence can this inner journey be triggered. The issue is not whether one should be close or distant. It is about psychic balance. When you are too accessible, you rob others of the symbolic journey toward you. They no longer need to look inward to connect with you. There is no tension, no spark, no gravity, and without that, the relationship, whether romantic, social, or professional, begins to lose its archetypal weight. It becomes ordinary. To reclaim your depth, you must begin to honor your own psychic space. Jung would describe this as protecting the self, the true center of your being, which cannot be given away without cost. When you overextend yourself, when your presence is constantly on offer, you allow the world to colonize your inner life. You forget to tend to your dreams, your symbols, your shadows. You become a mirror for others, but no longer a mystery for yourself. There is also a danger in being too needed. When others rely on you constantly, they unconsciously begin to resist your individuality. They begin to mold you into a figure who serves their own psychic needs, and in doing so, they blind themselves to who you really are. Jung believed that projection was unavoidable in human relationships, but he also taught that unchecked projection leads to distortion, dependency, and disillusionment. The more you are available to fulfill others' fantasies, the more they project upon you, and the less they truly see you. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means creating sacred boundaries, not to isolate yourself, but to restore symbolic balance. It means allowing others to miss you, to wonder about you, to work toward understanding you. It means stepping back so that your presence regains symbolic depth. When you are not always there, others must reach inward to reconnect with the image of you they carry, and in that act of reaching they grow. You give them space to integrate their own anima or animus, to confront their own needs, to step into their own individuation. In truth, stepping back is not a rejection of others, it is an invitation to a higher kind of connection, a connection built not on need, but on reverence. Not on comfort, but on respect, and above all not on function, but on soul. Carl Jung reminded us that the soul does not thrive on endless exposure, it thrives in the tension between light and shadow, presence and absence, known and unknown. When you stop being so available, you re-enter that tension, you become once again a figure of depth, mystery and psychic gravity. And it is then, not before, that others will begin to chase, not just you, but the part of themselves that awakens in your symbolic presence. Carl Jung introduced the concepts of anima and animus as the personifications of the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects residing in every individual. These archetypes are not merely gendered figures, but symbolic representations of our inner world's complementary forces, often seeking union and balance. The anima or animus can become projected onto another person, turning that person into a living symbol of unconscious desires, fears, and potentials. This process of projection is automatic, unconscious, and fundamental to human relationships. When someone is too available, their presence becomes fixed in the conscious mind, solid, familiar, and without the necessary mystery for these projections to take root. In other words, constant availability diminishes the capacity for the other person's unconscious to animate them as a symbolic figure. The mystery is lost, the depth becomes surface level. The psyche no longer has to engage its imaginative faculties, because the other is fully known, fully accessible. This accessibility reduces the other person to a known quantity, stripping away the power of projection. However, when you stop being so available, you retreat from the constant conscious presence that the other person relies on. This withdrawal creates a psychic void that the unconscious mind is compelled to fill. The anima or animus projected onto you begins to stir more vigorously in your absence. The person's unconscious starts to engage in an internal process, searching to reconcile the tension created by your distance. This search often manifests as an increased desire to pursue or chase, as the psyche strives to re-establish the symbolic unity that was momentarily disrupted. This dynamic can be likened to the way myths and fairy tales illustrate the pursuit of the beloved, often a mysterious figure who is elusive, only revealing themselves when the seeker embarks on an inner journey of transformation. Jung saw such myths as expressions of the collective unconscious, where the anima and animus play central roles. The chase is not just physical, it is a symbolic journey toward integrating the projected qualities within oneself. Understanding this helps us see that when people chase after someone who has withdrawn, they are not simply reacting to physical absence or social cues. They are responding to the stirring of unconscious archetypes that awaken a need for deeper psychological reconciliation. The withdrawal of availability creates a necessary tension, a dialectic of presence and absence, which fuels the process of projection and longing. Moreover, this projection is not merely about desire, but also about the unconscious attempt to integrate disowned parts of the self. The anima or animus represents qualities that the conscious ego may have neglected or rejected, such as vulnerability, creativity, strength, or intuition. When these qualities are projected onto another person, the pursuit can become a quest to reclaim wholeness through the symbolic other. However, this process is fragile. If the person who becomes the object of projection remains constantly available, they risk becoming a static image, a fixed point that no longer reflects the fluidity and mystery necessary for projection to thrive. Their presence becomes predictable, and the unconscious yearning diminishes. In contrast, by stepping back, by not being always reachable or emotionally present, you reintroduce fluidity and mystery, allowing the projection to deepen and the other person's unconscious to engage more fully. This insight invites us to reflect on the nature of attraction not as mere surface chemistry or behavioral manipulation, but as a profound psychological process rooted in the interplay between consciousness and the unconscious. It teaches us that attraction and pursuit are intertwined with the unconscious need to find parts of ourselves in the other, and that distance, scarcity, and unavailability can intensify this process by fueling projection. From a practical standpoint, understanding this dynamic encourages a healthy respect for boundaries and self-containment. It suggests that withholding constant availability is not selfishness or avoidance, but a necessary step to maintain symbolic depth and psychological balance in relationships. It preserves the space for unconscious work to unfold, for projections to arise and be integrated. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process by which one becomes a whole and integrated person. Part of individuation involves recognizing and managing projections, both giving and receiving. When you stop being so available, you allow others to confront their projections rather than remain stuck in simplistic patterns of dependence or familiarity. You encourage them to embark on their own journey of self-discovery, inspired by the symbolic challenge your absence creates. In summary, the role of emotional projection and the anima animus archetypes reveals why withdrawal of availability triggers pursuit. It is not a game of ego or manipulation, but a profound interaction between conscious and unconscious forces. By understanding this, we gain insight into the deeper psychological mechanics that govern human relationships, and can approach the delicate balance of presence and absence with wisdom and intention. This balance is essential for fostering genuine connection, personal growth, and the meaningful pursuit that leads toward wholeness. When you stop being so available, you introduce distance, a space between yourself and others that awakens these archetypal energies. Distance creates a tension that is not simply physical or emotional, it is symbolic. It signals to the unconscious mind that something important is missing or just out of reach. Jung recognized that the psyche responds profoundly to tension and paradox, and that these are necessary conditions for growth and movement. Desire, in this sense, is born from absence and longing. The instinctual archetypes of desire are expressed in many myths, legends, and cultural stories, and they mirror the movements of the human soul. Consider the archetype of the hero pursuing the beloved or the seeker questing for the sacred. These stories reveal a truth: desire is not fulfilled by possession, but by the journey itself. When you become less available, you step into this symbolic pattern. You become the elusive beloved, the sacred treasure, the mystery that calls the seeker forward. Jung's concept of the shadow, the unconscious part of the psyche containing repressed or unknown aspects of ourselves, also plays a role here. Distance invites confrontation with the shadow because it forces both parties to face what is hidden within themselves. When someone is always present and available, there is little need to engage with these shadow elements. The relationship remains on the surface. But when distance arises, the psyche begins to stir, and with it, the unconscious shadow contents. These can manifest as intensified emotions, fantasies, or a renewed longing for connection. The archetype of desire is closely linked to the psyche's drive toward wholeness and integration. Desire is not merely about wanting something external, it is about the soul's yearning to reunite with lost parts of itself. The pursuit triggered by your withdrawal is thus a symbolic reenactment of this internal psychic process. The person chasing is not simply pursuing you as an individual, but is at a deeper level, seeking to recover and integrate unconscious aspects of their own psyche that you reflect back to them. By creating distance through reduced availability, you engage this archetypal pattern and invite a dynamic interplay of presence and absence, attraction and withdrawal. This interplay creates the conditions for a richer, more meaningful connection, one that moves beyond superficial interaction into the realm of transformation. The tension generated by distance awakens the unconscious, prompting both individuals to confront their desires, fears, and potentials. Furthermore, Jung emphasized the importance of symbolic communication between individuals. When you withdraw, you send a powerful symbolic message that resonates with the archetypes operating beneath the surface. Your absence is not simply a lack, it becomes a presence in itself filled with meaning and possibility. This symbolic presence can ignite the instinctual archetypes of desire, stirring the other person's unconscious to respond with increased longing and pursuit. In practical terms, this understanding helps to reframe common relationship dynamics. It challenges the idea that constant availability is the key to closeness or affection. Instead, it highlights the value of maintaining psychic space and symbolic tension. When you are not always immediately accessible, you create a psychic invitation, an open question that the other person feels compelled to answer. This compels them to engage more deeply with their own inner world and with the connection you share. Distance, then, is not a form of rejection, but a catalyst for deeper connection and growth. It activates instinctual patterns that have been present throughout human history and are encoded within the collective unconscious. These patterns guide us toward connection, but they require the presence of absence, the push and pull that makes desire vibrant and alive. Understanding this process also encourages a more compassionate perspective on the behavior of others. When someone chases you after you withdraw, they are responding to profound psychic forces, not simply to your external actions. They are being drawn by archetypal energies that seek balance and integration. Recognizing this can help you maintain clarity and presence without becoming entangled in games or reactive patterns. Carl Jung's insight into the instinctual archetypes of desire offers a powerful lens through which to view human relationships. It reveals that what appears to be a simple social dynamic is in fact a rich, symbolic dance of presence and absence, longing and fulfillment. By stepping back and allowing distance, you tap into these archetypal currents, creating a space where desire can emerge in its most authentic and transformative form. Ultimately, this keynote teaches that desire is not a problem to be solved or a game to be won. It is a sacred movement of the psyche toward wholeness. When you stop being so available, you do not close the door, you open a gateway to deeper connection, one where the instinctual archetypes of desire guide the journey, awakening both yourself and the other to the mystery and magic of human relationship. When you are constantly available to others, you risk falling into patterns of dependency, where your sense of self becomes enmeshed with external approval, validation, and attention. This dependency can obscure the path to individuation, because it encourages the ego to rely on others for its sense of worth rather than cultivating an inner foundation. Jung warned that such dependency not only weakens the individual, but also distorts relationships, creating dynamics of need and codependence rather than authentic connection. Self-containment, on the other hand, is the practice of maintaining a clear and grounded relationship with yourself that does not require constant external affirmation. It is the ability to hold your own psychic space, to be present with your emotions, thoughts, and desires, without becoming overwhelmed or defined by the presence or absence of others. This containment creates a vital, energetic field from which genuine relationships can emerge, rooted not in need but in choice and mutual respect. Jung's concept of the self, the archetype representing the totality of the psyche, serves as a guiding principle here. The self is the center of the individual's inner world, the organizing principle that brings coherence and meaning to one's experience. To move toward the self is to move away from fragmentation, projection, and unconscious entanglement with others. When you stop being so available, you are not shutting people out. You are protecting and nurturing yourself, allowing it to emerge more fully. This process has profound implications for how relationships function. When both individuals in a relationship cultivate self-containment, they create a dynamic where each person is whole and complete on their own. They come together not to fill voids or heal wounds, but to share wholeness and support further growth. In such relationships, availability is a gift freely given, not a demand or expectation. The mystery and magnetism that arise from this balance naturally inspire pursuit and genuine interest. Dependency, by contrast, creates a psychic climate where the boundaries between selves become porous and confused. The needy individual loses sight of their own inner source and becomes entangled in the emotional tides of others. This entanglement diminishes attraction because it signals a lack of autonomy and emotional stability. Jung observed that the psyche seeks wholeness and authenticity. and it is drawn toward those who embody these qualities, rather than those who are fragmented or overly dependent. Self-containment also enables the important work of integrating shadow aspects, the parts of ourselves we often reject or deny. When you are constantly available to others, there is little opportunity to explore these hidden facets. You remain caught in the role of caretaker or performer, neglecting the deeper inner work that individuation demands. However, when you create space through reduced availability, you give yourself the chance to face these shadows, embrace them, and transform them into sources of strength. Jung's emphasis on balance is key. Self-containment is not isolation or emotional withdrawal, but a dynamic state of being fully present with yourself while remaining open to connection. It requires courage to stand alone, to face the unknown within, and to resist the pull of habitual dependency. But it is precisely through this courage that the self grows stronger and more luminous, capable of attracting others, not out of desperation, but from a place of genuine radiance. This keynote also sheds light on why people start to chase when you stop being so available. The chase is a response to encountering a self-contained individual whose inner wholeness shines through. Such a person holds boundaries firmly yet lovingly, signaling that their presence is not automatic but earned through respect and mutuality. This dynamic stirs the unconscious desire for union with the self, prompting pursuit not merely of the person, but of the symbolic wholeness they represent. In practical terms, cultivating self-containment involves developing healthy boundaries, practicing self-awareness, and embracing solitude as a space for growth. It means learning to say no without guilt, to prioritize your own needs alongside those of others, and to honor the rhythms of your inner life. This is not always easy in a culture that often values constant availability and immediate responsiveness, but it is essential for psychological health and authentic relationships. Ultimately, Jung's teaching invites us to see individuation as a sacred path, one that requires us to become sovereign over our inner world before we can truly engage with the outer world. To stop being so available is to reclaim sovereignty, to honor the self, and to invite others into a relationship founded on mutual respect and profound authenticity. This is where true connection lives, beyond the fleeting needs of the ego and into the enduring presence of the whole self. Throughout this journey into the depths of the psyche, guided by the profound insights of Carl Jung, we have seen that the simple act of stopping being so available is far more than a social tactic. It is a powerful expression of self-respect, individuation, and symbolic presence. When we withdraw from constant availability, we reclaim our sacred inner space, awaken unconscious archetypes within others, and invite meaningful pursuit rooted in mystery and wholeness. True connection arises not from need or dependence, but from the balanced dance of presence and absence, where each soul is honored in its fullness. In embracing this truth, we step into a deeper, more authentic way of relating, one that transforms both ourselves and those we encounter.